Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Postnatal Minds, the podcast. This is episode 12. And today is a topic that comes up in every episode I've ever recorded. And it's always one that I've said, oh, I've got to do an episode on that. And then I came across Anya and I was like, she's my girl. So today's episode is going to be on reflux. And I'm feeling a little bit unoiled because I've had a couple of weeks break and my little boy Arlo is in hospital, so you have to bear with me a bit, but I'm sure I'll get back into the swing a bit soon. But Anya, do you want to introduce yourself and let us know how it is that you got into what you do?
I will. So Rosie, thank you very much for having me here. First of all, I will say I am straight up, I'm a holistic reflux expert. That means that I look at everything that's going on for a child. I am rather different to most people who talk about reflux in that I believe it has a cause. I have proven and seen through working with over 13,000 parents over the last 10 years that it does have causes and we can resolve it. I found myself dealing with reflux just over 12 years ago when my firstborn came along. I had every intention of getting back to my corporate job and using the maternity leave to set up a side business with my traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture that I had studied. And she was going to be sleeping by, 3 months, like all of my nieces and nephews were. And I had great plans. And she decided life was going to be somewhat different to what I had planned. And for months, I asked help from doctors, midwives, health visitors going, why is my baby crying all the time? I was told when she was 6 weeks that when she was 6 weeks old, that she was the most stubborn baby that health visitor had met in 30 years because she didn't stop crying. Yeah. That was the first time I stood up for her. And I'm like, actually, you can leave my house because she's in pain. And if you're just saying she's stubborn.
I can't imagine using a word like stubborn for a newborn as if they're
at 6 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started to search. I just Googled everything all the time. And because my background is mechanical engineering and project management, I had my happy place prior to this was an Excel spreadsheet, 47,000 line items, and I would find the answers. I would find the patterns. This is what I did as a profession. I was well known in management consulting for being able to find the root cause and then solve it. And after 9.5 months of severe sleep deprivation, which led to postnatal depression for 3 years,
right,
I was like, well, I have to do it myself because she was still struggling. When we were told that solids would make things better, they got even worse. And we didn't think they could get worse, but they did around 6 months. And so I started to track everything. It's like, right, there's got to be a pattern in here. So I eventually, after 3 weeks of tracking, identified a whole load of foods that seemed to be triggering her. I was still breastfeeding because every time I tried formula, it made things worse. Turns out she had a cow's milk protein allergy, so that's not surprising.
Yeah, that'll be it.
But it didn't give me, when I cut out the dairy, gave us some improvement, but it wasn't consistent. So there was more to uncover. Anyway, I ended up limiting my diet to 3 foods, which I will never share. So please don't ask, because I've discovered since there's a lot more a mom can eat, an awful lot more. But within 3 weeks, I had a baby who was sleeping every night, who was calm, who was no longer self-absorbed is what it felt she was like. She was so clingy. She just wanted to be focused in. And she started to engage with the world, started to look around. So it's like she was comfortable in her body. So I liken this a lot when I'm talking with my clients that in the moment you stub your little toe on the bathroom door, like your world closes in. There's nothing more important than your little toe in those few seconds. The house could literally be on fire, but you're like, not now. My toe's got my attention. But normally we're blissfully unaware that we've got a body. We're in it, looking out, using it to navigate the world. When there's any sort of discomfort and pain, that focuses inside and we don't pay attention too much that's further around us. And that transformation that I saw in my baby girl was that she started to pay attention to her grandparents. pay attention to little books, start interacting with her toys, start wanting to move more and be away from me. It was like all of a sudden she was just like her peers. So being an engineer, it wasn't enough for me to know, right, I've got 3 foods. I needed to eat more. She needs to eat more. So I had to figure out why. Came across a whole load of research that was done on the infant development or the infant digestive system development back in the 60s, 70s and 80s, summarized by the World Health Organization in 1990 and ignored by the entire world since. But it started to make sense because I combined that with my traditional Chinese medicine knowledge around nutrition. I'm like, these are little bits coming together. So fast forward another year and a half when my second girl came along. So, right, we know what we're going to do here if she has reflux. No, we didn't. She had a tongue tie, which was undiagnosed. Then it was released. Then it reattached. Then we had it done again. Then I had to go through a whole process for that. She also had a sulfite allergy, a mild nut allergy, cow's milk protein allergy. And we struggled with her and her breathing. Her journey it wasn't until she was 5 where she was started sleeping through the night. And that was a huge other piece of this puzzle. And it got me thinking of, I had learned so much. I'm like, I've been through postnatal depression for so long and I learned so much with it. And if I could avoid anybody else going through it, is my knowledge helpful? And so I completely left my corporate life as a program manager and decided to become the baby reflux lady to literally change lives by identifying causes. And there isn't a week that goes by that I don't learn something new.
Yeah.
I will be honest. I believe I know more about baby reflux than anyone else on this earth. And I still don't know it all.
Yeah. And do you think that your experience of reflux really contributed to your postnatal depression diagnosis?
I mean, if I look at, first of all, I was sleeping, again, being an engineer, I tracked everything. I had apps for everything.
Yeah.
I was sleeping 2 to 2.5 hours on average per night. So that alone will cause depression. I was constantly worried, what if there's something else going on for my baby that everybody else is missing? And this constant worry was eating me up. And when I asked anybody, I was told, no, she's fine. But I was living a very different reality where she wasn't fine.
Yeah.
So it was this unintentional gaslighting, like my reality, my life wasn't being accepted as my actual reality by the people I was asking for help from.
Led to you presumably feeling isolated,
I stopped,
all of the above. Yeah.
And I stopped telling people how I was feeling. I stopped being honest with anybody if they asked me. I said, I'm great. And, I couldn't bring myself to share photographs on social media. But even when I look back to the family photos I shared, it was the 5 seconds of a video where my little babies had a quick smile. Like there were glimpses. What I put out to my family and friends is not what I was living.
I think every mum to a certain extent can relate to that a bit though. And I think, listening to you, that's kind of one of the reasons I started Postnatal Minds, because we weave through the jungle, we get through it, and then we look back and we're like, I did it and I've got, my child's okay now. But bloody hell, that was hard. And at the time when you're feeling totally and utterly overwhelmed with hormones, you might have reflux, colic. My two both had really bad colic. And you might have all these things going on and you're just on survival mode and you just get through it. And then, but actually, what if there are things along the way that can help you get through that quicker or in a more supported fashion? Or, because the isolation factor is huge, isn't it? And I know from my own experiences and those conversations that I've had on here and with other mums that it stops women going to groups, going out for coffee, because the fear of that baby crying or getting an episode whilst they're out outweighs the benefit of being out.
Hugely. I look back, there's a lot of good friendships that fell apart, and a lot of it I take personal responsibility for now because I wasn't sharing. I wasn't being honest when people were asking me how was I. I'm like, I'm fine, things are great. It takes a huge aspect of vulnerability. I believed I was failing my babies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel like that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the narrative from the medics didn't help. They were telling me, well, she's gaining weight. She's fine. You know, like every baby, like even every human, when you go to a doctor's surgery, you're on your best behavior. Like all of a sudden there's something magical about those places. And you're like, oh, happy babies.
No. I always say when I go into the GP, there's like a magic dust that cross the door, and then they're like, ta-da! You're like, what?
So when parents are being vulnerable and being honest, to then be told, no, it's all fine. Or this is another one I was told, you're overly emotional. This is you and your anxiety causing your baby's reflux.
It's totally invalidating you. Yeah, it's invalidating your feelings and your thoughts and any confidence that you might have in that time that's totally new for you. And you know, I always say about birth and having children, it can be the first time in your late 20s, 30s, 40s that you have become vulnerable again in a really big way, and you're doing something that you've not done before. You know, usually by that age we've tried all the things we want to try, or we've got to where we want to be, and that having that huge bout of vulnerability again with this human that you've got to keep alive is the perfect recipe for not feeling confident, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's added to as well by the isolation that social media creates. Equally, our lives, the diversity that we live within. My parents live on the far side of Ireland. You know, I'm just outside London. They're not within shouting distance. They might be on a phone, but they can't come and hold a baby every few minutes. My husband's parents are 3.5 hours away up in northern England. We had, within the previous 12 months, we had moved to a new place as well. So we hadn't even established our own lives there because we had been working and both of us used to travel 5 days a week with work. So we had unintentionally isolate ourselves, but not knowing what level of community support it takes to raise a baby. And I went to a few classes. I tried to get out, but of course my kid wouldn't lie down. She couldn't do baby sensory. She absolutely screamed the place down. So then I was embarrassed, but nobody was able to reach out and go, it's actually okay. There's things we can do here. Let's solve it. I don't believe that any human should ever be left in pain without an explanation. When we get explanations, we then get to choose whether we do something about it. And sometimes we can't. You know, I mean, you've got kids, Rosie, you know, they'll fall over, they'll cut their knee. You can't take away that pain in that moment, but you can hold space for them to let them know it's okay. Yeah. And even having that as an adult, for somebody else to see, look, I know it's tough. I can see it's tough. And we'll get through this, without judgment, is so powerful.
You just reminded me, actually, second time round when I had my boy and he had really bad colic. And this is the second time mum with a lot of confidence. And I'd had a difficult pregnancy where I'd had to kind of take the reins on my care then, let alone even before he was born with his condition. But I remember it being really bad, his colic. Well, I didn't know what it was then, actually. And I remember I remember saying to my mum, this is actually, I'm getting so anxious about particularly the days that I've got both my toddler and him because I can't do anything because he's just screaming 24/7. And I made an appointment with the GP and I was so on the verge of tears because it was so bad. And he didn't do it when we were in there, which was typical. I think he did towards the end, actually. But I remember saying to her, he will not stop crying. And I know it's not just him being a baby. And I got that total, I mean, I think he's fine. I think it's, you just need to, you can try something if you want, but I really don't think it's that. And I think it's just him being a baby. And I remember feeling all those things that you worry about anyway, going to the GP, wasting time, overreacting, totally invalidated. I remember rushing out, getting into the car and just crying, what a waste, because it was such a big thing to have even got the child up and out at that age, into the pram, into the GP, and about the crying anyway, the feeding, it's a big thing going out in those early days anyway, isn't it? Yeah. But I remember calling my mum thinking, what is the point? What was the point of that? It just made me feel. And I remember the GP then called me about 15 minutes after my appointment and said, oh, I've just been thinking and maybe you could try some omeprazole. And I was felt angry and sad and all the above. I said, you know what, don't worry about it. Thanks, no thanks. I said goodbye and just ended the call because I was so cross that I've been made to feel like that as a mental health nurse, a second-time mum, and someone who, should never be made to feel like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's, that is someone, that's what I'm saying. That's someone that's got previous experience of being a mum in that newborn period. So I can totally see how women don't seek help. But before we move forward, for those that may be pregnant or might not have any experience of reflux and might have heard this word being bounced about, how would you describe reflux and, what exactly is it and how common is it?
So it's a great question, and I'll give sort of two answers. There is, what is reflux? Reflux really simply is regurgitation. It is the movement of anything from the stomach into the esophagus. It's not supposed to go that way, mostly, but it happens. The ability of the human body to regurgitate is normal. So hiccups is regulation of air, getting air out of the stomach. Burping happens if we drink a soda too fast. Also getting rid of air out of the stomach because we don't want it in the lower digestive system where it causes more discomfort. So we regulate that. And vomiting. If there is a bug like gastroenteritis or some sort of Clostridium difficile or something like that, a bug or E. coli, or just a sickness or a vomiting bug. Yeah. Or in the cases where there might be something like an allergy, and the stomach actually plays a role in as the immune system, and it goes, I don't like this, I'm going to get rid of it, and it vomits. All of these are regurgitation events. They are reflux events. The ability of the body to reflux is normal. However, the frequency with which it happens in babies is not normal. Okay. If I had to excuse myself 10 minutes after drinking a coffee every day to bring it back up, I'd be really annoyed that I paid good money for my caffeine and I wasn't going to get the benefit from it. We have to look at what is acceptable or not. So reflux is regurgitation. Now we have reflux and silent reflux. Silent reflux is when the regurgitation only comes to either the esophagus, the back of the throat, or just into the mouth. Whereas reflux is visible vomit. Okay. So where you can see it being vomiting, that is the only difference between reflux and silent reflux in the truest sense of the word. What the medics frequently diagnose as reflux or silent reflux is a healthy baby, child who's gaining weight, who has, all of their awareness, they're healthy, they've got no illnesses and things like that going on, who is very unsettled. And if there's visible regurgitation, they'll call it reflux, gastroesophageal reflux, or they'll add gastroesophageal reflux disease, add the disease to the end, if it is, an inverted commas from the NICE guidelines, causing marked distress. That's the only difference between normal reflux in the medic sense and reflux disease. They will also diagnose lower digestive discomfort as silent reflux. Lower digestive discomfort also appears as colic. This is what colic is. It's, 99% of babies with colic will pass gas and then go, the body relaxes. It's digestive discomfort. They've got air in their gut, which shouldn't be there. So we need to find out why it's there. That also gets diagnosed by the medics as silent reflux if it doesn't disappear after the magic 12-week colic label kind of expires, essentially, even though there may be no reflux there at all. My work covers the entire spectrum and digestive maturity and food, the whole digestive system, because this is what we need to look at for all babies to see what's really going on for them.
Would you say that some babies are more prone to reflux than others? Because I guess I've always wondered about Arlo, and I actually had it with both my children, but Arlo has got a smaller rib cage, smaller body. And I remember when he was hospitalised when he was really young and he ended up having an NG tube. And I learned from being in hospital that his colic happened whether he was bottle fed, breastfed or NG fed with milk straight into the stomach. He got it. So I knew when people were saying to me, oh, he's probably swallowing air when he's breastfeeding or bottle feeding. But actually, when he had the NG with milk going straight into his tummy, he was still getting it.
Yeah. So I will say it's most parents where babies are tube fed are told that reflux is par for the course. It shouldn't be. If we think about it, there should be no air intake with tube feeding. So, I mean, I address this in my online courses, looking at tube fed babies. What are we really doing? How is their body supposed to be working? What are we manipulating with the tube, and how is that affecting them? Equally, air intake when it's aerophagia, which is one of the causes of reflux, doesn't just happen when babies are drinking. When a baby cries, you go, and in that gasp, the diaphragm pulls down so quickly, it draws air in and it draws it into the stomach as well. So we have babies crying bouts, they will increase air intake. If they're using a dummy or a pacifier, that can increase air intake if they're not using it correctly. Like, there's so many reasons and ways that air gets into the system. It's not just when they're feeding. Some tube feeding practices introduce air unintentionally, but they do. So do preparation of formula. Just by shaking milk, which is the instructions on the packet, we introduce air into the formula. There can be compounds within the milks. And this goes for compounds within breast milk, depending on what mum's digestive system is doing and what she's eating and how she's eating. Yeah. That these can then ferment, but not in the stomach. They won't drive upward reflux. They'll drive the lower digestive discomfort as a source of air there. Also from medication, a lot of compounds and medications ferment in a baby's body, simply due to the normal development of a baby's digestive system and what enzymes they do or don't have online at any particular age.
Okay, that makes sense. So I appreciate that there's no one word answer, but what are the most common signs of reflux in babies, and how can mums tell the difference between reflux or other issues that you've mentioned, such as dairy intolerances?
Yeah. So first of all, if anybody is pregnant or thinking of getting pregnant, there is a lot we can do during pregnancy to minimize the risk of reflux.
Really?
Okay? There's a lot. And again, I've got a short online class for it. We can't just say we're going to guarantee no reflux, because there's over 30 different things that can cause reflux or contribute to it. Some of them we can't avoid, and that's okay, because we can redress them if it turns out that reflux is present. Some of them, though, we can avoid. So there are things we can do during pregnancy. And so that's my online course is, I think it's about 90 minutes. But when baby's arrived, my first question, your biggest guidance is yourself as a parent. You've got to trust that even though baby didn't come with a manual, that you know way more already than you think you do. So if you think your baby is more unsettled than they should be, that's your biggest thing to lean into. And then get my free symptoms tracker. I look at over 80, maybe it might be up to over 100 things now, in order to understand what a child has got going on. From respiratory system, digestive system, skin issues, birth issues, pregnancy stuff. We look at a whole swathe of things. But if a child has 3 or more things regularly, and kind of regularly could be multiple times a day or multiple times a week, depending on what it is, then there's always something we can do about it. Whether you want to do something about it or not is that's a parent's decision. But when you understand what is the cause, then you get to take that decision from an empowered space, going, I know why I'm going to do this, or I know why I'm not going to do this. And all the decisions then in parenting come from a much more informed place, and it also avoids guilt later on. Because when you're able to say, I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at the time, that's all anybody will ever ask of you.
So you're promoting early intervention, really, aren't you? That then helps that confidence and that knowing as much as you can before you're in it, maybe. Yeah,
absolutely. And what I don't tell my clients what to do. It's not like going to a doctor and go, here you go, there's a script. I want my clients to understand what is going on for their baby, how their baby's body is communicating with them, and why I think the recommended plan of action, what I'm hoping it to address, and why, and by when. So that they leave any consultation going, okay, we know we're doing oral play. We know how long we're doing it for. We know what we're expecting to change. We also know that if nothing changes in a week, we know how to interpret this change or no change into the next correct step.
Yeah.
But they are making the decision for their child every step of the way because they understand what their baby's body is telling them. You know, I encourage my clients to ask questions all the time because that's the only way we can make decisions. You know, it's like when I used to work, you know, people go, why are you saying that? Well, if we do this here and then like we talk to these people, we get one of two answers. We get yes or a no. If we get a yes, this is the course of action. If we get a no, this is the course of action. And you can pre-plan based on things going the way you wish or not wish, next steps, because you now understand the whole thing, rather than coming to a project and go, we don't know what they're going to say, therefore we can't predict anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like applying common sense to the same situation.
Yeah. I know that you've got some really helpful courses and resources for people that might or are experiencing this, but could you give us some of your top tips in terms of, you know, what are some simple at home strategies to help reduce reflux symptoms and any kind of positions that can be better after feeds?
I'd love to, but some people will do it and they'll be wasting their time, and some people will be already doing it and it'll work and they think it's a magic cure. So I don't you'll never see 10 top tips for reflux from me. The only tip I ever give is find the cause, take action. You know, I've got my book, which is published 8 years ago. It's got a manual to go through. I will say that over the last 8 years, I've continued to update my knowledge. So the online course is more in depth and faster, but this is an absolute game changer. It really is.
Could you just read out what your book's called and what's in it so that they can find it?
Yeah, so the book is the Baby Reflux Ladies Survival Guide, and you'll get it on Amazon across the world. You know, WH Smiths have it, and I think it's currently less than £10 in the ebook format. You know, it's got the answers. There's over 13,000 copies sold across the world. We have to take account of, you know, what is going on for your baby. But the actual first tip, the one thing that every parent can do is to stop blaming themselves.
Yeah.
To trust themselves that they know their child better than anyone else on earth, and that it is their job and it's okay for them to keep advocating for answers. And if you don't get an answer that makes complete sense to you from whomever you're asking, either ask a different question or ask a different person. You know, it's when something's not sitting right with you, take action. That is, and I know it is so hard. And I promise, if you ask me or somebody I've trained or my online course or my book, instead of a doctor, you will get answers way faster, because this is it's still, although I've been doing it over 10 years, it's still a relatively new profession, holistic infant reflux management.
Yeah.
And within a week, your baby can be living a different, more calm, more comfortable life. And then you can get on with the challenges of parenting, because Lord knows there's enough in that as it is.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, actually. Like, what's the quickest time that you've seen someone benefit, you know, someone's baby's behavior change as a result of input?
Less than 12 hours. So I remember about 2 years ago, working with a baby who was 9 months old. They were in Canada. So it was a 2 p.m. call for me. I think it was 7 or 8 their morning. And we got on the call, mum and dad and baby girl. She was 9 months old. And I said, stop eating. Mum, baby, stop eating. And they went with what? I said, stop eating. What else have you got in the house? This is the very beginning of the call. I was like, you're about to eat porridge. Stop it. Go and get a ripe banana. Both of you have some banana and we'll go through everything else. Anyway, this child had a tongue tie, she had oral issues, she was still being breastfed, and she was on solids. There was a lot of things in the mix here.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a tongue tie to be resolved. Okay, there was lots of oral dysfunction going on, but there was also digestive immaturity at play. And that's why I said, stop eating that porridge right now. And I gave mum, it's like, right, we literally went through the fridge that day in cupboards going, what have we got in? Right, you can have this for lunch and then get yourself to the shop. These are the other things you need for dinner, etc., etc. I got a text message about midnight. No, it was 2 a.m. My time. So it was probably 8 or 9 o'clock their time. And they're like, what have you done? I'm like, what do you mean, what have I done? So they're like, we can't sleep because we've been watching her. She's been sleeping for 3 hours. She hasn't moved. We keep checking that she's breathing because this is the first time in 9 months she's ever slept more than an hour and a half.
Wow.
And that was because she was finally comfortable in her body. That's how quick changes can happen. Now, that's not for everyone. It depends on what the underlying cause is.
Sure.
But I do recommend, like, within 2 weeks, I usually say 10 days, you will be seeing very noticeable differences to notice the right thing to do. If it's dietary change, you'll see changes within 2 days. Again, not 100% changes. It won't be totally gone, but enough to know with confidence you're on the right track. And when you get on the right track, it becomes self-motivating. You're like, okay, this is working, this is working. And you understand why it's working. So yeah, it can be really quite quick.
Wow. And with your holistic background, do you work with things like probiotics and other natural remedies, or do you focus more on lifestyle and diet?
So probiotics come into it, but they're not a cure. Yeah, the problem with baby is not a lack of gut microbiome. They have a gut microbiome. It depends on how it's interacting with the foods they're eating, be it the ingredients in the formula milk, the food mom is eating. Stress also plays a massive level on gut microbiome health. So holistically, I look at everything. Like, we look at everything from mum's gut health to how mum is chewing, if she's breastfeeding, to the level of stress parents hold, even if they're formula feeding, to the positions they're holding. Again, because different positions, different bottles for different babies with different mouths. There is no one answer. What I have, because I'm an engineer, is I have a process. The process is the same steps, and it always gets you to the right answer for your baby. Yeah, it's like planning a journey. For you to get to London or me to get to London, we need different directions because we're not in the same place.
Yeah.
But the process of planning the journey is always the same. You know where you are, you know where you want to get to, and then you can use a map or whatever guidance to map from A to B.
Yeah.
That's the process we go through. The assumption is the destination is always reflux free, but it depends on where you're starting, whether you need body work, whether your baby needs help from a body worker, whether they need an oral release, whether they need just oral play, whether it's a change of milk, a change of bottle, a change of diet, or just de-stressing. There can be some really simple things. For some, it's really complex, but one way or the other, there's always a way to improve and make a baby more comfortable than they currently are.
Yeah. And you mentioned stress, which is something that, unless I don't think I've ever met a new mum that hasn't got a little bit of stress, but how can stress impact?
So I'll talk about two communities. We have breastfeeding moms and we have those who aren't breastfeeding. In breastfeeding moms, when we're stressed, the sympathetic nervous system is active. So we are producing more adrenaline, more cortisol. That gets into our milk because it's in our blood. So baby is getting exposed to higher levels of adrenaline and cortisol, which means their digestive system doesn't work as well as it could. If we're more stressed at bedtime and they're having breast milk, then they end up going, but I'm really tired and I want to sleep. So that is tired and wired because their body's been given all this adrenaline and cortisol to tell them to be awake, but what they need is to be asleep. So that's where breastfeeding is really important, and breath. Like, the best way a mum can activate a parasympathetic nervous system is to breathe in through the nose and make the exhale longer than the inhale. Do that a few times and you will flip your body straight away. It doesn't get rid of the worries that go around reflux and everything, but it does change the internal chemical and biochemical ongoings of the body. Now, for babies who are formula fed or bottle fed, and for any other parent or caregiver in the house, if we're stressed, we communicate that stress and we pick up on other people's stress. Have you ever felt like you didn't want to go out on a Friday night and your best mate's like, well, but I want to go. I need a wingman. Come on. I need you to come with me. You've had the most awful week. All you want to do is mope on the sofa at home. And actually you get up because you're going out for your best friend. It's nothing to do with you. You're like, right, I'm going to go. You end up at the pub or club or wherever you're going, and all of a sudden you feel better. Not because anything on the inside of your head has changed, but because you're absorbing the energy of the people around you who are having a good time. When I talk about this, the energy of who we are being, whether we're feeling depressed and mopey or elevated and joyful, that is, we pick up on that all the time.
Yeah.
And our body, again, physiologically responds. So if you're stressed around your baby is going to be stressed as well. If you're holding them and you've got tension in your own shoulders, they're going to mirror that because they're learning from you. They're like, okay, I'm going to be like this now. And that stops everything from working as well as it should. Whereas when you breathe, let your shoulders fall down, just, the worries are still there, but your body, you can turn on your parasympathetic nervous system and your baby will respond in kind, especially at the nighttime settling when it's so hard and it gets harder and harder and harder and everyone gets more and more and more stressed. This is the most important time to start breathing and letting it go and relaxing. Because when baby is stressed, they will cry more and then they will drink more air and then they'll get more reflux and then they'll be unhappy about it because it'll be causing discomfort and then they'll cry more and we get this cycle again.
Yeah, and the anxiety. I remember when Alba it would always come on at like 6:30 p.m. and it would sometimes go on for like 2 hours. I remember Lloyd actually having to leave the room and put earbuds in because it was just too much for him to handle. I think I was a little bit, because I'm a mental health nurse and I've had people screaming in my face before and I've had to put it together and use my own, relaxing, trying to calm them down. I was a little bit more able to manage it, but it was so hard. I can remember FaceTiming my mum being like, I've tried everything and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and it's really hard. And I didn't know this back then. The greatest gift is our breath. I want to be really clear. Your anxiety and your worries are not causing your baby's reflux, but they can be making it worse than it needs to be right now. Yeah, it's never a parent's fault. And it is really, really hard when our own reserves are so low, when we feel like it's really tough to have to pull it together. Like that is the hardest thing to do when all we want is for somebody to help us. And so when I love when I get couples coming onto the consultation calls because I get to give dad or the other partner jobs. It's like, it's your job to you breathe, she'll unintentionally follow. Yeah. Like is a yawn contagious right in her presence? Oh, a big yawn, because that is doing the same. Another way to force it is to sing. It calms the whole nervous system. Our voice activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Can be really, really, really easy ways to start coming back to ourselves.
Yeah, so true. And that's true for mental health alone as well. That's a great tip for that postnatal time, just to remember to breathe. From birth onwards, that's important to remember, how important breath work is in birth, because we do forget to breathe.
Absolutely. I've studied breath work, and the number of people walking around who have forgotten to breathe properly. I talk about this so much, and it's the first thing I ask parents to do before they come into my course, is to actually do a 10-minute breathwork session. And the reason that's offered because when we're panicked, when we're living in a heightened state of stress, and we do in our modern world, our baseline stress levels where we think we're calm, we're probably not calm at all. We've just become used to a higher baseline. But I want everybody to be able to learn and to take on the information I'm teaching. And in order to do that, they have to have their parasympathetic nervous system active. So 10 minutes, breath work. And even clients who've done this, like, oh, that was really good. I'm like, have you done the breath work recently? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, I can see you're really stressed. Maybe, and because breathing is something you can do while your child is in your arms. You don't need to go to a silent room. You don't need to close your eyes from it. To get the benefits.
And I think particularly in this world at the moment that's fast-paced and social media and short dopamine hits, we're tuned in to have unrelaxed parasympathetic systems and nervous systems. And I think there's a lot to be said about reconnecting our central nervous systems through breathing. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of that. I think that's why I enjoy yoga and Pilates so much now. I've in my postnatal time, because you just don't get to do that properly.
No, and this is what I mean. The power of the breath is beyond phenomenal. You know, these are gifts for life. And I think, you know, I did a little bit of hypnobirthing pre and therefore breathing and all that for my second, more so than my first. But then I walked away from it. You know, that was for birth. No, like that was a gift for life. And I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't taught like that. It wasn't taught that. So it's taught for birthing, but whenever you feel stressed, just take a deep breath. You know, there's a reason why it's a cliche, oh, just breathe. Literally just reconnects us so much to ourselves.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the things I wondered was if you don't seek treatment for reflux and you just ride it out, are there any long-term effects of reflux in babies, children, or?
Controversial question.
Yeah.
So my honest opinion, babies do not grow out of reflux.
Right.
Okay. They will adapt. So for example, babies who have tongue ties, they will adapt how they're using their tongue in order to be able to drink in a controlled way. Really importantly, this does not automatically convert to a safe swallow. I'm saying this as a 45-year-old woman who has a tongue tie, and unfortunately, I regularly choke or splutter on a drink, which is not normal. The fact that I have to pay attention to my swallow every single time I eat or drink something is not normal. Okay?
Yeah.
That's because my tongue has adapted. We end up with oral dysfunction stuff, where it looks like the vomiting might reduce. If babies are sleeping with their mouths open or have an open mouth posture at rest and they're breathing through their mouths, we increase chances of ear, nose and throat infections. We increase the risk of tonsil and adenoidectomies later in life. We reduce their ability to get into the fourth stage of deep sleep, which means they don't do emotional regulation during sleep, which builds up over years. So we can have children who are physically asleep for 12 hours or more a night, but their body's not getting the appropriate levels of rest, which if they're not doing emotional regulation, then this later, like 7, 8, 9, 10, presents like behavioral issues. For babies who are on medication or amino acid milks, they all impact the metabolic system. So medications have well documented side effects of reducing calcium absorption, magnesium absorption, which increases bone fracture rate later in childhood. We've got increase in things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is SIBO, histamine sensitivity, which looks like more allergies, increased rates of allergies to foods because of having medication early in life. And all of these things then last a lifetime or a very long time and are much like, SIBO is very difficult to undo. It takes a time to do, you won't see it in a child under 18 months, but it's years to undo. It's very, very difficult to undo. And that's really, really specialist support for that. So there is long-term issues with how we are supporting these children, guessing and say trial an amino acid milk. unfortunately, amino acid milks are exceptionally high in protein. This protein in the first 12 months of life forms the child's metabolic rate. It sets it for life, and that then predisposes or increases the likelihood of obesity later on in life, and then all the associated issues with that. Now, amino acid milks are amazing in the right situation. And when a child goes on to solids, we have a phenomenal opportunity to go, right, how much protein are they getting in their amino acid milk? How do we rebalance that with the solids so that by the age of 12 months, they haven't had this huge excess level of protein? They've actually got a really good metabolic rate set for them. So, everything in the right place, used really intentionally and correctly, all of these tools are amazing. Even medications have an absolute vital role to play to prevent erosive esophagitis and damage to the esophagus. So it's about knowing why we're using a particular tool, for how long, and the impact it has, and then how do we just make sure that we guide this child's body back on the right path and give it the right support rather than just a tool on its own. We have to use the other tools as well.
Yeah. And you reminded me there, we spoke a lot about, he agrees.
It does.
Not just the child's potential trauma, but the trauma that the parent then holds is a whole other conversation. You will never forget those weeks or months where you experienced that. So this could have been like 3 episodes, couldn't it, on all the contributory factors and signs and symptoms. What is your biggest piece of advice? How would someone know that they might need to seek some help from you or their GP or whoever it is that they can do? And what's your biggest piece of advice?
So my biggest piece of advice is always trust yourself. Always. If there's something niggling, listen to it. You will never regret listening to yourself. Never, ever, ever. Don't use that as hard as it is. Don't let yourself be bullied into things you're not comfortable with for your child. Yeah. It's really hard. And this is why the symptoms tracker is the free resource I give away all the time. Okay. This is where you start in order to know what is going on and to make that decision of whether you think you need to take action or not.
Yeah. And how do people get that tracker on you? How would they get that from you?
Go on to my Instagram account, just write the word tracker on any single post of mine, or onto my website, and it's the Start Here button on the website.
I will tag you in the podcast when it comes out, but what is your Instagram?
So I am Baby Reflux Lady on Instagram, or the Baby Reflux Lady on Facebook.
Amazing. Aine, thank you so much. I can't believe how quickly that time's gone, but I hope that just by continuing the conversation and talking about reflux and making it, like I'm trying to do with, emotional and mental health, making it an absolutely okay thing to follow your gut and seek help and support for, because knowledge is power, right? And
absolutely. I love that phrase.
Yeah, particularly around, the breath work and just regaining some, knowledge and confidence in that area. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.
No problem, Rosie. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
You go. Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.